What if I told you that Mercedes could be gaining time in each corner without technically breaking the regulations? Because just before the Japanese GP, the FIA has uncovered a loophole in the front wing regulations that has unleashed the team's total fury and calls into question whether Mercedes' current dominance is really legal or simply brilliant engineering at the limit. The most shocking thing is not only the possible advantage, but that although everyone is denouncing it, the system continues to pass official controls, leaving Formula One on the brink of a technical war that can change the entire season. Mercedes arrives at Suzuka at the worst possible moment for the rest of the grid, leading the championship with a car that seems to have taken a brutal leap in performance, and with an internal confidence that has not been seen for years. But just when everything seemed to fall into place for them, a controversy breaks out that changes everything. The FIA detects a possible loophole in the front wing regulations, and all the teams point directly at Mercedes. Because here we are not talking about a simple aerodynamic improvement, nor about another evolution within the normal development of a single-seater. We are talking about an interpretation of the regulations that touches one of the most sensitive areas of this new era of Formula One: active aerodynamics. A system designed precisely to avoid artificial advantages at key moments of the return, but which could now be used for just the opposite. The regulations are apparently clear. The ailerons must switch between high and low load settings in a very limited time, practically synchronized between the front and rear axle. The objective is to prevent a team from manipulating the balance of the car during braking or in the middle of a curve. That is, eliminate any dynamic effects that are not completely controlled and predictable. However, what the analyses have revealed and what has finished lighting the fuse is that the front wing of the Mercedes W17 would not be behaving like the rest. Under certain conditions, that aileron takes much longer to return to its maximum load position, reaching figures that double what is expected within the regulations. And this is where the real tension arises within the paddock. Because this delay is not simply a failure or an anomaly. It is potentially a tool. A window of time in which the car could maintain an aerodynamic balance different from that expected, generating advantages at critical moments such as corner entry or transition phases. What infuriates rivals the most is not only the possible advantage, but the fact that Mercedes continues to pass all FIA controls. In the static verifications in the pit lane and park firm, everything seems legal. And that leaves other teams in an awkward position. They know something doesn't fit, but they can't prove that it's illegal under a strict interpretation of the rule. This is the point where Formula One enters dangerous territory. Because when the letter of the regulations allows something that clearly goes against its spirit, a door opens that historically has changed entire championships. And in the paddock there are already voices that say it bluntly: if the FIA does not act, everyone will be forced to copy this solution, even if that means pushing the regulations even further to the limit. This is how this conflict begins, with Mercedes at the top, with a system that no one fully understands, and with the rest of the teams desperately pressing for the FIA to make a decision before it is too late. But if you thought that the controversy ended in a simple suspicion, this is where everything becomes much more serious, because now it is no longer just about what Mercedes does, but how it does it, and why no one can stop it. The key point that has unleashed the war within the paddock is understanding exactly what is happening with that front wing. Frame-by-frame analyses, especially from onboard cameras and high-speed shots, have begun to show a very clear pattern. When the aerodynamic system changes state, the W17's front wing does not respond immediately as it should, but rather maintains an intermediate configuration for longer. And this, although it may seem like a minor detail, is potentially devastating at a performance level. Because in Formula One, every millisecond in the car's aerodynamic behavior directly affects the balance, grip, and confidence of the driver. That small delay of up to 800 milliseconds is not just a number. It is a window where the car is operating with a completely different balance than the FIA intended to allow. Imagine what this means under hard braking, in a fast corner like those at Suzuka, or in a change of direction. While other cars instantly recover their downforce, the Mercedes could be playing with that delay, maintaining less resistance or modifying the support just at the most critical moment. That is to say, it is not only an advantage on the straight or in the curve, it is an advantage in the transition at that point where you really gain time. This is where rival teams begin to raise their voices louder, because they no longer see it as a simple interpretation of the regulations, but as a deliberate use of a gray area. A kind of hidden mode within the car's behavior that cannot be easily detected in standard FIA tests, but that on the track could make enormous differences. And the most frustrating thing for them is that there is no easy way to protest, because the system, in theory, complies with the verifications. There is no illegal piece, there is no prohibited mechanism. What there is a dynamic behavior that the regulations have not been able to limit correctly. And that leaves everyone in an extreme situation. They know that Mercedes has something, but they cannot attack it with a solid regulatory basis. That is why the pressure on the FIA has escalated brutally in a matter of days. Teams like Ferrari, Red Bull, and even manufacturers like Audi and Honda have already shown their concern about what they consider a very dangerous precedent. Because if this is allowed, not only Mercedes gains an advantage, the door is open for everyone to start looking for similar solutions, taking the regulations to completely uncontrollable terrain. And this is where the real dilemma comes in, because any decision the FIA makes now will have enormous consequences. If he decides to intervene and limit this behavior, he could directly alter Mercedes' performance in the heat of the championship fight. But if you decide to do nothing, you will be validating a regulatory loophole that could completely redefine how cars are designed in this new era. Meanwhile, the Japanese GP is approaching, and tension within the paddock is at its peak, with everyone looking not only at Mercedes, but at the FIA, waiting for an answer that could change everything. And so we reach the most critical point of this entire story, because we are no longer talking just about a possible technical advantage, nor about another controversy within Formula One. We are facing a decision that can completely change the course of the season. The FIA now has all the pressure on it. He knows that there is behavior in the Mercedes that, at the very least, goes against the spirit of the regulations. He knows that the teams are furious, that the paddock is divided, and that any move he makes can trigger a chain reaction that is impossible to control, that if he decides to act before the Japanese Grand Prix, he will have to do so immediately, probably through a technical directive that limits this delay in the front wing. But that would mean, in practice, directly hitting Mercedes just when it leads the championship, forcing them to modify a concept that could be the basis of their current performance. And here appears the first scenario, one that many teams are demanding: immediate intervention. Nip this regulatory gap in the bud, even if that generates controversy. Because for them, what is at stake is not just a race, it is the competitive equality of all of Formula One. But there is the other way, and it is the most dangerous. If the FIA decides not to intervene, if it allows Mercedes to continue using this system because it legally passes the tests, then the message is very clear. These types of interpretations are allowed. And at that moment, the technical war will be total. All teams will begin to develop similar solutions, pushing the regulations to limits that not even the FIA will be able to control in the short term. This leads us to a scenario where regulations lose authority, where it no longer matters what was intended to be avoided, but rather what can be exploited. And in the middle of all this, there is Mercedes, a team that has not only found performance but has done so at the exact limit where Formula One has always lived. That point where engineering borders on the forbidden without crossing the line. Because from their perspective, there is no cheating, there is innovation. There is no illegality, there is intelligence to read a regulation better than anyone else. But of course, that is precisely the line that has always generated the biggest wars in this sport. Now, with Suzuka just around the corner, everything is ready for a weekend that could mark a before and after. Not only for what happens on the track, but for what happens off it. Because the real question is no longer whether Mercedes has an advantage. The real question is Formula One going to allow it? Or is a technical war about to break out that will change everything? And in the end, it all comes down to an idea that has defined Formula One since its origins. It's not just the fastest car that wins, the team that best understands the rules wins, even when those rules have cracks. What is happening with Mercedes is not an isolated case, it is the perfect representation of how this sport works at the highest level. A rulebook designed to limit certain advantages, and a team that finds a way to reinterpret it without officially breaking it. That is what has unleashed the fury of the rest, not only because of what it means today, but because of what it can cause tomorrow. Because if the FIA decides to stop this, it will be sending a clear message. The spirit of the regulations is above any interpretation. But if you don't, you will be validating a precedent that can completely change the way cars are designed in this new era. And that's where the real impact of this story is. It's not just Mercedes. It's not just a front spoiler. It is a battle between innovation and regulation, between technical intelligence and sports control. A line so fine that, when crossed or even just brushed, it causes exactly what we are seeing now: tension, suspicion, and open war within the paddock. With Suzuka as the immediate stage, everything remains in the hands of the FIA. A decision that will not only affect a race but can define the championship, and perhaps even the future of these regulations. Because in Formula 1, legal loopholes don't last forever. But as long as they exist, they can decide everything. If you want, in the next step we can expand the first block with even more technical detail and on-track examples to make it even more powerful and increase retention. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.